It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Yo, what is up, everybody? Finally, a live stream where I did something right and everything isn't screwed up. It's kind of nice, or at least I think it's kind of nice. I guess the chat will tell me. But so far, I know the chat heard the music, so that's a plus. So, I have a lot of stuff to recap. A lot of things have been happening over the last couple weeks, and it's been definitely an interesting roller coaster. Got to take a little time off. Well, kind of took some time off. Went to the HVAC school training symposium. That was really cool. Going to talk about that a bit on the stream tonight. Got a bunch of other stuff to talk about, and I definitely want to get to your guys' questions too. So remember, if you guys do have questions, make sure you throw them in caps lock so that way I can try to see them. If I miss any of your guys' questions, feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Okay? So I hope everybody's doing well. Hello to everybody that's in the chat right now. It's awesome to see all these great normal, regular viewers and the new viewers. It's really cool. So for the new guys, I like to do this every once in a while. So my name is Chris, and I am an HVACR service technician. I also run and operate a small refrigeration and air conditioning business in Southern California. So I started making these videos as a training aid for my own employees, and then it just kind of grew legs and turned into something that I never really planned on it turning into. So I am not the best at social media. I'm not the best at interacting with people. I try, but I'm trying to get better at it every single day. So bear with me if I don't respond to emails fast enough or YouTube comments fast enough. Know that, when I release a video, like for instance, yesterday's video, actually, I released it on Saturday, so it wasn't yesterday, but just out of curiosity, let's see. The video that I released on Saturday evening, because I released it early. Normally I do Sunday, so it has 139 comments. And on top of that, you got to figure there's a couple hundred comments for the previous 200-something videos that are on my channel, so it's a little difficult for me to get and answer every single comment. I definitely try. But, it's difficult, okay? So if there's something pressing that I didn't answer in the YouTube comments, feel free to send me an email like I just mentioned a few minutes ago, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. So Let me see what we got going on in here. Hello to everybody. Welcome to the stream. Awesome. It's really cool to get the support. I'd be kind of curious in the chat right now, guys. Do me a favor, guys and girls. Let me know where you're from. I'm curious in the chat. Go ahead and just say city and state, city and country, whatever. Let me know where you're from. It's always interesting to see all the different places that these videos and these live streams reach. It's very humbling to get all the feedback and the comments and different things like that. Kind of makes me feel a little kind of imposterish, kind of an imposter syndrome thing, because when I get support and I get these emails and these comments, I do feel a little inadequate. Like, I don't know if I'm quite the person to be answering these questions, but it is really cool. So right on. Yeah. Already people coming in. There's people all over the place, all over the states, Oklahoma, California, Virginia, Utah, Arizona, Huntington Beach, California. That's right around the corner from me, 25 miles from my house. I'm in Riverside, California is where I'm at. Right on. Yeah. Awesome. Great people all over the country right now. This is really, really cool. Europe, Hungary. Wow, that's awesome. It's so cool to see in the chat. This is amazing. Buffalo, New York, Quebec, Canada, Frisco, Texas, South Florida. Just spent some time in Central Florida, and I do have to say I kind of like the country lifestyle of Central Florida. I really do dig that. So St. Lucia, West Indies. That's really cool. Boston, Miami, Florida, South Florida, Atlanta, Georgia. I can't even read them all. New Brunswick, Canada, Grenada. That's really cool. Wow, this is really cool. It's amazing what these videos and the reach that I have just by posting some silly service calls that I perform on YouTube. It's really, really awesome. This is really, really cool. Australia, that is great. Actually, I do have quite a few viewers from Australia, which is really interesting. Yeah, people all over the place. This is really cool. I really do appreciate all the support and the feedback. It's really great. So, as usual, I got a bunch of topics that I want to cover in front of me. I got like a bullet point list, and then I want to get to your guys' questions. So if you want to ask a question, make sure you put them in caps lock, and I'll try to scroll. If I don't answer it right away, just keep reposting it until myself or one of the moderators says to stop, okay? So about a week ago, I was able to go with my friends, Adam, Bill, and Rick from the HVAC Survival YouTube channel, and then Adam and Bill from the HVAC Overtime YouTube channel, and we all got to meet in Central Florida. We went to the HVAC School Training Symposium. Brian Orr put it on, and his great, amazing staff did an amazing job. So the HVAC Training Symposium, it's really interesting, and the way that I described it to my wife is it's a bunch of people just like me. The mindset that I have, I'm hyper focused on my tasks, and I really delve deep into them. It was a bunch of people. I know he had 200 tickets sold, but I know there was more than 200 people there because you had, guests and different things like that. But it was over 200 like-minded people getting together to learn and help to educate each other. Now, I did a kind of a inspirational talk kind of a thing. The state of the industry was the title of my talk. And I'm working on getting the footage. So once I get the footage, I will release that on my channel. It's a lengthy talk, but I rewatched it and I didn't get too many douche chills. When I watch myself and I try to rewatch my stuff, I kind of get goosebumps and I get cringe. I call it the douche chills. I didn't get it too bad. There was a few of them like, I could have done that a little bit better, but for the most part, it was interesting because when I got up there and started talking, I got in a zone and I genuinely had to rewatch it because I had no idea what I said. I had general ideas that I covered this and I might have said this, but, Rachel Kaiser, I believe it was Rachel Kaiser. Forgive me if I'm butchering your name. That's Eric Kaiser's wife. I believe her name is Rachel Kaiser. I hope I got that right. But anyway, she had walked up to me because I said some things about females and how females can help our industry and how I'm kind of a little ashamed to say that, I'm afraid for my daughters to get into the industry because it's a predominantly male-dominated industry, so it's a little difficult to bring females in and have them properly treated. So that's one of the things that I fear for the industry, but I know bringing more females into the industry is a solution to our employee shortage. So anyways, I had discussed that, and she had walked up and said something to me, and it was like she was saying, she appreciated what I said, and I genuinely didn't remember it. It was kind of difficult, and I hope I didn't butcher her name. I'm pretty sure it was Rachel Kaiser. I hope it was. But anyways, it was really interesting, and it was an amazing event. So the cool thing about the HVAC Training Symposium was this was the first time that I met Bill, Curious HVAC Guy, Adam, A-Team Adam, and Rick from HVACR Survival. And it's funny because we all rented an Airbnb together and stayed with each other for 3 nights. But it was really cool. You know, we've been friends for a very long time. Pretty much all of us have been friends for about 2 years on the internet. My wife calls them my fake internet friends, right? But we've all in different aspects communicated with each other for the last 2 or so years. And it was really cool to be able to meet them. And then on top of that, to be invited to be a speaker at Brian Orr's event and then get to meet all the other awesome content creators and social media people, educators. My gosh. I mean, just to name a few, Eric Kaiser, Don Gillis from Emerson Copeland. You had Trevor Matthews from Refrigeration Mentor. You had Ty Brannaman from his own social media platforms. Ty is an amazing educator. And by the way, sitting down and talking with that guy, man, what an interesting guy. Trevor Matthews, getting to sit down and talk. Trevor and I have been talking back and forth. We're working on a few things, and it was awesome to be able to sit down and meet him in person. Getting to see Brian Orr, Nathan Orr, his entire crew. It was absolutely amazing. Then there was a bunch of other amazing speakers, and then there was vendors there. But the interesting thing about the HVAC Training Symposium was everybody genuinely wanted to be there. It was so interesting. It was like a grassroots vibe. And you know, there was this great educational sessions. They had amazing talks, right? And he broadcast it live. You could buy online tickets. I think you might still be able to buy online tickets to see all the footage and stuff. But it was amazing to be there. But honestly, the educational sessions were amazing, and I haven't even watched them all yet. But the best part about the HVAC Training Symposium was the breakaway conversations. My gosh, you started talking to one person, 2 other people walked up, and before you know it, you had 5 people there, and you're talking for 45 minutes, all vibing off of each other, feeding off of each other, coming up with ideas. And this was happening in a bunch of different social groups. And some of the groups would get to bigger than 5 people. Some of them would stay with 2 people. But the breakaway conversations were absolutely my favorite part about the HVAC Training Symposium. The educational sessions were also amazing. But the cool thing about the educational sessions is that if you bought a ticket, you get access for like, I don't know, 30 days or something like that after the event to watch all the educational sessions again. But the in-person conversations, you know, you don't get to do those again for another year until they have the event again. So the in-person conversations were my primary, and the educational sessions were I was there to watch those, but then I can also watch those. I'm already starting to watch them on video, you know, because I have access to that. And if you guys, I think you might still be able to buy the online tickets. Maybe you guys should definitely go to hvacschool.com or hvacrschool.com. I do want to clarify something that a lot of people will confuse myself and Brian. We are 2 different people. We don't look anything alike, but people will confuse us and say, hey, Chris, great podcast. And it's like, I don't technically have a podcast, but I actually am working on something right now. But sometimes they'll confuse the 2 of us. And it's not a bad thing because we both provide great content and stuff, but we do got to give credit where credit's due. And Brian Orr is an amazing person. And I do have to say thank you so very much, Brian, for inviting me to be a part of your event. And trusting me to be able to get up on stage and talk in front of people and not take my shirt off, you know, that kind of stuff. And that's kind of a funny joke at Brian's brother, but you had to be there kind of a thing, right? So anyways, it was amazing. So let me see what we got going on in the chat. I see Jason Johnson saying getting to see Nathan without a shirt. That's right. It's amazing. Okay, I'm going through the chat right now, seeing what I'm missing. Hello to everybody that's in here right now. Let me see. Yeah, I hope I got that in. Going through here right now. Don't forget Rick Sims. There was so many great people there. It's amazing, guys. Also getting to see, I already read that one. Let's see. When am I going to stop by New Jersey to give us some HVAC classes? You know, that is something that I'd be very interested in doing. It's not very practical for me to do that right now, but I would like to get into the training side of things somehow. It's difficult with my business, but I would love to be able to do in-person training with people. I see myself as kind of a ride-along person. It would be really cool to go to other companies and or have companies come to me, send text to me, and potentially work with me for a week or something like that, just to get some hands-on, big picture experience, kind of a thing. It's ideas that have crossed my mind for many years now. I think the most practical way to do it, the difficult thing about doing that kind of stuff is like the insurance and the liability. But the most practical way would probably be to figure out a way that the technicians can come to me, spend a week with me, travel with me on a normal routine service calls, 6 to 7 hours a day, doing, you know, service calls, and just kind of give them the whole big picture idea and how I look at things. It's an interesting idea that I've thought about many times. So let me go through the chat. Let me see what we got going on in here. All right. So looks like it was really cool, Anthony, to get to talk. I talked to so many different awesome people, and it was really, really cool. So couple things. So one thing I did see at the HVAC School Training Symposium, there was a couple different tool manufacturers there and product manufacturers. Everybody was displaying. Diversitech was there. Appion, Appion was there? No, Appion wasn't there. Diversitech, Fieldpiece, Measure Quick, Refrigeration Technologies, Infocon, Testo, to name a few. Copeland Emerson, and I'm sure I'm missing a few of them. TrueTech Tools was there. Retrotech was there. There was a bunch of different great people. Or Energy Conservatory was there, I think. Not Retrotech, but Energy Conservatory, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, but there was a lot of great people. But couple different products, takeaways, just from I didn't get to spend a lot of time looking at the manufacturers or distributors that were there. But two things. Number one, I'm very interested to find out that Infocon, who makes the Infocon Stratus or the D-Tech Stratus, whatever they call it, which is that fancy, really expensive leak detector. I didn't know this, but they actually make a replacement sensor for flammable refrigerants or hydrocarbons. So you can still use the Stratus and you just pop this sensor in there, and then now it becomes a flammable refrigerant leak detector, which I thought was really interesting. I'm really stoked about that. So I will be ordering one of those. So that's really cool. And then there was another guy that I had met. His name was Chris Eads. I hope I pronounced that right. And he came up, and he was a service business owner, and he came up with an idea and kind of went to market with it. And it's really interesting. What you guys want to do is look up aceasyt.com. So ACEASYTEE.com. ACEasyT. And what he did was, and I don't have video of it right now, but he took PVC tees, but he made them with a cap on the end, and he has an interesting system where you can clean the line. So this is more for the residential side, but I thought this was a very unique product that he had. And so it's a 3/4 inch PVC tee, and actually what you're buying is the tees. You buy a case of tees, and then it comes with the cleaning tools that will attach to your hose nozzle. But the tools, if you look at the videos on there, aceeasyt.com, and I've got no affiliation with him. I just thought his product was really cool. But the tools that he has will insert into the tee and blow the lines out. So you don't need multiple people to clear a system. So you can clean and or vacuum just a drain pan out. You can flush the lines out in one direction or the other direction. So it's a really interesting product. So definitely check out aceeasyt.com. Again, I got no affiliation with the guy. He was just a really cool guy, and I thought he had a really great product. So lots of emails that I want to cover. Let me look through the chat real quick. Let's see. Can you run a freezer compressor without a DTC valve? I'm going to cover that right now because I actually have that question on my stream right now. So, I mean, on my list of things to talk about, something different. So what I want to talk about is liquid injection. So I actually have a question that Mike had asked me. So I'll go ahead and kind of lump the two questions together, Hunter. So Copeland scroll compressors, what they have done is they have come up with a way to cool off low temperature compressors, because when you have low temperature compressors, you're going to have higher compression ratios, right? You're going to have a lower saturation temperature and typically a higher discharge temperature, right? Or condensing temperature. And when you have high compression ratios, you tend to have compressor cooling issues, especially on low temperature, especially on some of the newer blended refrigerants like R448A, which is one of the newer refrigerants we're using on low temp systems. But you see it on 404A too. So Copeland has found that most of their compressors on the lower temp side, you should add some sort of compressor cooling. They call it liquid injection or a DTC valve, discharge temperature controlled valve, okay, DTC. You can call it a temperature responsive expansion valve. Copeland actually makes them. I think they're Y107 valve. I don't remember what they are, but they're Y something or other valves. But look up temperature responsive expansion valve, discharge temperature control valve, DTC valve, liquid injection, different ways. So Copeland compressors, they actually have a rotolock fitting on the side of their compressor where you can mount a DTC valve or a liquid injection. And Mike's question actually is on the Heatcraft condensing units, specifically Heatcraft. They manufacture their condensing units to where they're shorter, okay? And oftentimes, there's sometimes not enough clearance to mount a DTC valve, discharge temperature controlled valve, right? Because the DTC valve uses a power sensing element, a temperature element that goes in the head of the compressor. There's a little spot for it. You push it down in there. And sometimes on the Heatcraft condensing units, there's not enough room between the top of the unit and the top of the compressor. So they will use a different valve. They use a fixed orifice metering device controlled by a solenoid valve. And if you've ever installed or worked on a Heatcraft condensing unit, if you look at the low temperature compressors, you'll notice that the way that they install this fixed orifice metering device, the liquid injection, is really interesting because they basically brazed a piece of 1/4-inch copper that has a tight 90 on it, and they filled it with a crap ton of 56% silver solder. So it's like when you go to change that compressor, most people don't understand. Whenever you change one of those compressors, I highly encourage you to change out the liquid injection valve completely. And what I have actually found is on most of the Heatcraft units, even though they came with the fixed orifice liquid injection, you can actually still fit the DTC valve in there, and then you don't have to try to unsweat that to get it sweat back in, because trust me, trying to fill with all that solder is like a nightmare, okay? So I highly suggest if you're going to replace a Copeland compressor that's a low temperature that does have liquid injection, that you change the liquid injection. If it has the fixed orifice metering device, personally, I'm going to try to go to a DTC valve and put it into the top of the compressor. You can, if you go to the Copeland mobile app and you Google the Copeland mobile, go to the Copeland mobile app and look up the compressor, and then go to the service parts or whatever, it'll actually tell you the part numbers for the actual DTC valve. So that's something you want to do. You guys, we have the ability and we have technology, and we need to utilize it a little bit better. So oftentimes, supply houses are not informed enough to know what it is that you're asking for. They don't even know what a DTC valve is. They're like, I don't know. So we as technicians are going to have to do a better job of finding the parts that we need and going to the supply house with a parts list instead of calling them and saying, I need, what do I need for this? Because oftentimes, if you do get an answer, it's going to be a long time coming before they actually answer it. So, but can you run a low temperature compressor without a DTC valve? You can, but in the high compression ratio situations, you're probably going to run into some overheat situations without the DTC valve. So in an interim basis, you might be able to get away with it for a night or two until you can get a replacement valve. But I highly suggest that you put a DTC valve or liquid injection back into the compressor, because that's what it needs to properly cool the compressor. So we'll definitely be talking about that a little bit more in the future. Looking through the chat, Anthony Marino says it meant a ton to get to talk to me. That's really cool, bud. I'm honored that you wanted to talk to me. That's really cool. And something I did an Instagram live before this, just to kind of announce that I was going to go live on YouTube, but I want to say it on here too. If you guys see me out in public, stop me and say what's up. Sometimes when I'm working, I get in a zone and it's hard for me to remember. I got to slow down and pay attention to people. I never planned on being this person on social media, and I'm still focused on my work. And so when I'm in supply houses or out in public, I'm usually in a zone. When I go places, I usually don't. And it's part of my own curse. I typically don't go places and get to enjoy myself and enjoy my surroundings because I'm such a hyper-focused person that, let's just say I'm going to Disney World, okay? If I'm at Disney World or Disneyland or whatever, if I was there, I'm focusing on the next place that I'm going to go in the park. I typically don't enjoy myself on the journey to the next place, and I need to do better at that. But that also is a problem when I'm out in public. When I'm at a supply house or something like that and I'm going to get a part, I'm focused on getting a part. People will email me after and say, hey, I saw you in the supply house, but you looked really busy. I didn't want to stop you. Stop me. Say what's up. I don't mind. And sometimes it takes me a minute. I have to do a double take and be like, oh, yeah, how's it going, bud? Because I just get so hyper-focused on what I'm doing. So if you guys do see me, stop me, try to talk to me. I tend to wear asshole on my face, but I really don't mean it. It's just part of my own mental issues and stuff. So let me see what else we got going on here. Dwayne Doxley says Brian Orr is intimidating. Brian's actually a really nice dude, and I think he's kind of similar in me, in that sometimes people may think he's not approachable, but he genuinely is a very nice guy, and he is approachable. You just, you know, need to approach him at the right time. But yeah, he's a really cool dude. So is there a video of the Airbnb AC repair? Cyborg Sheep is asking. So funny enough, when we were at the training symposium, myself and all the guys, we rented an Airbnb together, and the air conditioner broke in the Airbnb. And here we are in Central Florida. None of us have tools. You know, we're like, what do we do? You know? And it's funny because Rick from HVACR Survival, he MacGyvered that. He grabs a fork from the drawer in the kitchen and like bends a fork and manipulates it to be able to get a 5/16 screw off and like open the system up. Found out that it was going off on low pressure. I think it was a Lennox heat pump. And then, long story short, the system had like a floating restriction, I believe Rick said. So what he did was, we didn't really have tools. I think he borrowed some gauges and some refrigerant because we thought maybe it was low. But when he put the gauges on, he realized it wasn't low. And when he reversed the system, whatever the restriction was, you know, got out of the way and got us through the rest of the weekend. So we were able to put it back into cooling and it continued to work. So, but I think there is a video. I didn't take it. I know Adam took it. I don't know if that's something he'll release or not. So I already answered that question. Let me get to the chat and see what I'm missing. Let's see. Primetime saying that I was a little incorrect. A DTC valve is used in a critical situation. System isn't balanced. You installed many low temp scrolls and never installed DTC. Condenser has to be bigger. Okay, so yeah, I kind of see what you're saying. So you're saying that you can survive without the DTC valve, but I'm assuming that people, you know, on existing equipment, if you're sizing your equipment without a DTC valve, then maybe you can size accordingly. But it's also very difficult to oversize equipment these days. You can't really oversize condensers in certain situations, especially if you're buying prepackaged condensing units, because you're going to affect your system TD, and that can become an issue too. And we're running into some problems. So I agree with you, Primetime, that there is instances for sure that you don't need a DTC valve, but I'm kind of going off on a tangent in another direction. With a lot of these new AWEF standards, annual walk-in energy efficiency standards that Department of Energy is setting across the United States, what we're going to tend to find is that refrigeration manufacturers now have to design equipment with energy efficiency in mind. And so the government, Department of Energy, has instituted rules that they have to meet certain energy efficiency requirements. They don't necessarily tell them how they have to meet those requirements. They just have to meet that energy efficiency number. So with that comes equipment being properly matched. That's very important. And then on top of that, they're doing things. They all do different stuff. Some of them use microchannel condensers. Some of them, they oversize condensers. They do different things. But, you know, with that being said, on single component systems, they're actually floating the head pressure way low, down to sometimes 100 PSI, 125 PSI, 150 PSI. Traditionally, we would have head pressure control valves and or fan cycling maintaining 90-degree condensing temperatures, 180 psi, somewhere in there, somewhere in that range. But they're not doing that. They're floating that down to lower the compression ratio, or to reduce the energy consumption, essentially. And when they do that, that's creating some evaporator efficiency problems because, for instance, out here in Southern California, we typically design for the higher ambient temperatures, 115, sometimes 120 degrees, depending on where you're living. But then in the wintertime, we can have extremely mild conditions, about 50 degrees, right? And your 2 horsepower compressor at 120 degrees now becomes a 5 horsepower compressor in the wintertime. And on single component systems that don't have any kind of capacity control, you will screw your evaporator TD up massively. And we're running into some issues like that. So sizing our equipment properly is becoming even more critical these days because of those new AWEF requirements, because you can't be oversizing condensing units. In the past, we could get away with it, but with these new systems, it does become a problem. So, and you know, unless you create a false heat load or something like that, which you're throwing your efficiency out the window when you do that. So you can create a false heat load by putting a bigger head pressure control valve on there, by running the fan cycle temperatures or pressures way higher, so that way you maintain higher condensing temps, but then you lose your energy efficiency. So it's an interesting gamble that we're having to run into. I do agree with you, Primetime, that you can get away without DTC valves, but you need to be careful and make sure that you understand what you're working on, because if people are just oversizing equipment like we have done for so long, we're starting to run into more and more problems with the new AWEF requirements. And also, to be fair, I believe the AWEF requirements only apply to walk-in coolers and freezers that are 3,000 square foot or less. I believe the bigger stuff has different requirements that they have to meet. So, all right, so let me go ahead and get to the chat. What does my streaming setup look like? Trailmaster skiing. Not really something I can show on here. If you go to my Instagram, the Instagram live I just did, I posted the video. I showed my streaming setup. It shows my setup and all that stuff, so you can probably see it there. I don't really have a video of it per se on my channel. Let's see what else. Do the CO2 come to, do I think the CO2 will come to light commercial? Yeah, it's inevitable that they're going to bring anything they can to light commercial to try to reduce global warming potential and stuff like that. Ironically, I don't really get frustrated with all this stuff, but I do see hypocrisy in a lot of stuff. And it's interesting because the industry is going to CO2 and hydrocarbon refrigerants when 10 years ago they were bitching about drilling for oil, which if you need hydrocarbon refrigerants, propane, you have to refine the oil, right? And it's a byproduct. So you're still drilling for oil to get hydrocarbon refrigerants. And then the CO2, they were bitching and they were pushing out dairy farms and stuff like that out of California because of the CO2 emissions from the cows. But yet we're still using hydrocarbon refrigerants now and CO2 refrigerants. So there is all kinds of crazy problems. But to be fair, I'm not afraid of new refrigerants and new stuff because it just means that there's more potential for us HVACR service technicians to learn more and make more. Because if they're changing stuff up, it just means there's an opportunity for us to learn new stuff. So I'm not afraid of it. It's just, new things that we have to research and understand. It's so important that us HVAC service technicians know that we can't just lean on supply houses to give us education anymore. We can't just assume that supply houses know how to size equipment anymore. Half of my supply houses don't even know about the new AWEF requirements and the new condensing units and stuff that they're selling. Interestingly enough, if you're doing any of the new AWEF condensing units, which is pretty much across the United States, if you go buy an off-the-shelf pre-built condensing unit, it's going to be AWEF compliant everywhere, not just California, all across the states. And if you're going out, let's just say you have a compressor that's bad and you have an existing walk-in cooler or walk-in freezer. Okay. We'll use a walk-in freezer, for example, and you have a compressor that's bad and you opt to buy a condensing unit instead because you get a whole package, and boom, done. Throw a condensing unit on there, use the existing evaporator. You might not be able to get away with that anymore because with the new AWEF standards, when they float that head pressure so low, the expansion valve sizing is very critical. And most of the times you have to go with a balanced port expansion valve. So it's not just as easy as swapping a condensing unit out anymore because you're going to run into potential problems. It might work in the summertime, but then in the wintertime, you might run into capacity issues. So lots of things that we need to think about and understand. And the cool thing is that as technicians, we have new things that we have to learn, and that makes us more valuable and that makes us worth more. Therefore, we can get paid more, right? So it's great. So let's go through here. I'm missing questions. If I miss your stuff, feel free to post it again or send me an email, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. I do want to say that I already announced it in the beginning. I'll say it again, and I'm going to make a YouTube video and social media posts. I am hiring right now. I'm looking for a service technician. Now, I'm looking for an experienced service technician that understands the restaurant refrigeration, that has ice machine experience, exhaust fan experience, air conditioning experience, reach and cooler experience, physically fit, can handle working in kitchens, high stress environments, that kind of stuff. I know I'm asking for a lot. So I'm looking for that experienced diamond in the rough unicorn technician. If you're in my local area in Southern California, I definitely love to talk to you. I'm specifically located in the Inland Empire of Southern California. I am also willing to consider training another apprentice. Now, I currently have an apprentice right now that's doing really good, but he's about to graduate on to the next level of being an entry-level service technician. So I'm going to start letting him go out on service calls a little bit more in here and there to kind of get his feet wet, right? So I am going to have time to be able to start training another apprentice to potentially make him grow as a technician. So in a perfect world, I find that unicorn experienced service technician and he comes to work for me right now and he hits the ground running and we're good to go. And worst case scenario, I'm willing to train an apprentice. Again, I need people to be local to me here in Southern California, the Inland Empire specifically, and capable of working on the kind of equipment that I do. If you're interested, if you're in the area and you're interested in working with me, feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com and I will definitely post it on all my social media platforms in the coming days and stuff too. So let's see what else we got going on here. Mike B says means we got to buy new toys to use on the job. That's right. All these new changes just mean that we get to do new stuff. Let me see what else. We're going in here. Uh, looking through the chat, seeing what I'm missing. Nothing too much. Nothing too much. Okay, cool. I'm gonna get to my list of things to talk about. So, let's see. Already answered that one right there. Already answered that one. I'm just crossing off my list of questions. I got stuff written on a list. So I had an email asking for advice on gaining customers, right? This is a gentleman that's a new business owner, and he was just curious about how he can start to gain new customers, but he wants to gain new customers that are not penny pinchers, that are always going to bitch about the price and try to haggle and different things like that. Okay, it's going to take time, and you're going to have to struggle through the haggling. That is just part of the business, especially as you're coming up as a new business owner and you're working with mom and pops and things like that. Unfortunately, these days, a lot of people are going to haggle. So it's stuff you got to work with. You need to stand firm with your pricing, but make sure your pricing is competitive and it works for you. Now, as far as how do you set your pricing and how do you get new customers, that is a really difficult and complicated question. I do not have an easy answer for you with that, okay? The business that I started was started by my dad many, many years ago, 30 years ago, something like that. I came to work officially for the business 20 years ago, and we have maintained a lot of the same customers. Now, we've gained new customers, but we still work for one of my dad's very first customers. And because of that customer and because of his honesty and integrity, we grew by word of mouth. We typically don't advertise. We do have our name on the side of our vans, but it really just gets us stupid phone calls from pregnant moms who said that we just cut them off more than anything. We really don't get service call work kind of stuff from the name on the side of our van. We just get people pissed off because someone cut them off. Typically, it's people that don't know how to drive either, by the way. Most of them, they'll come in on me, and I'm a pretty calm driver, but people will call and they'll be like, one of your guys just cut me off. And it's like, well, actually, you're talking to the guy that cut you off, and I didn't cut you off. It's you don't know how to accelerate when you get on the freeway, and I'm in a 15,000 pound vehicle that doesn't stop on a dime. So when I'm going, you're going to get out of my way. But anyways, it's a whole thing and whatever. But so we've been lucky enough that a lot of our stuff has been word of mouth over the years. So it's not the perfect business model. Now, I do want to talk to you about, the haggling on prices a little bit more too. You need to understand that your price is your price. You need to stand firm to your price, whatever you make it. Now, I mentioned that you want to be sure that your price is good for you, but also competitive. You need to stand by your values and what you are and what your worth is. That's a really important thing, but that's also a dangerous thing because depending on the customer, they may not be willing to work with you if you don't haggle. So every business is going to be different and you may have to tailor it accordingly. Maybe you live in an area predominantly that's going to have people that are going to haggle. So maybe you need to elevate your prices so you have room to haggle down. I mean, there's different ways to do things, right? But you still need to stay competitive and know your worth. So I'm not the best business advice person to talk to, but I hope that I answered some of your questions there, okay? And some of these people, I'm not going to mention their names because some of the questions might be confidential or something, so I'm just going to use anonymous names or different things. But this one I don't think needs to be anonymous. Jeremy had asked me a question and potentially a suggestion for a standalone freezer that is extremely reliable. The type of work that Jeremy does, it's very difficult to get people out because of POs and different things like that to work on the particular equipment. And he wanted to know a general idea for a freezer that is very reputable. Now, the question was a little bit vague, Jeremy, so I'm going to answer it, kind of broad. I'm assuming that you're talking about a walk-in freezer because the way that you were explaining your question, okay? And so he's basically saying that he wants equipment that's not going to break down because it's so difficult to get people out to work on that said equipment. In that situation, Jeremy, I would strongly suggest that you build redundancy into your refrigeration equipment. In the situations that you're talking about, money is not so much of an issue. I understand that it is, right? Because you're working on bid work and stuff like that. But in the situations that you're running into, I would build redundancy into your freezers. So have two separate systems that potentially run your freezers and have a lead lag situation where, one can run and then another one can run at a separate time. You can turn one off, turn the other one on. Now, it's not just as simple as installing two condensing units and two evaporators. You're going to have to engineer your system properly with, different things. So that way, when one system's shut off for a week while the other one's running for a week or something like that, you have controls and solenoid valves and different things so that way you don't get liquid migration and different things like that. So you want the system to be properly engineered, but I would highly suggest redundancy in your equipment and then have some sort of of a lead lag system with time clocks or something that's going to rotate the primary condensing unit. So that way one condensing unit runs and you'll get equal runtime on both of your equipments. But then at the same time, if you ever have a breakdown, you have another piece of equipment that is perfectly capable of running that entire system by itself. And then obviously doing proper preventative maintenance. So then you can have scheduled downtimes and stuff like that. So I highly suggest redundancy built into your equipment, bud. Okay. And I wouldn't get too technical because, again, not going into too many details with the type of issues that you're going to run into getting vendors to come in and work on your equipment. You don't want it to be so complex that people can't work on it. So be careful over engineering things to an extent, because then you're going to have an even harder time getting technicians that are competent enough to come in and work on your equipment. So let's see what else. JCC 3279 says that hope myself and my family are doing well. Yes, they are doing great, and Luke is doing good too. So other than being an expensive ass dog, Luke is doing great. So my doggy Luke, he's about 8 months old now. He's a silver Labrador retriever. We had sent him away to training for a couple weeks, just obedience training and stuff. And then when he came home, he ended up getting sick while I was in Florida. My wife had to take him to the emergency 24-hour vet in the middle of the night. Oh my gosh, this dog is costing me an arm and a leg. Like, good grief. This is what pets do for you, right? So emergency vet fee, which is stupid expensive. And then everything ended up being okay. Just some issues. He had like a cut and it was infected and all this stuff. So we took care of all that. And then he had to go back for a follow-up today at the vet because he's got some like weird bumps on his head. And it's just like, oh my gosh, it just keeps going more and more and more money. But hey, he's a family member and we take care of him, right? So it is what it is. But good gosh, dogs are expensive. I forgot about that. So Glenn had asked me a question. It was an interesting question. So he said, have I ever had staff that disrespected me and, was hard to work with? And that's kind of a loaded question, but yes, I have had those situations. And coming up in the trade, I grew up in this business, so I've made a lot of mistakes. And, I've made friends with service technicians. I've been, when I started at this business working full-time for my dad, we hired another service technician about the same time. So him and I were kind of on equal levels, but then I excelled past that service technician. And we had some issues with that because there was some jealousy and stuff like that. But he's a good guy and we got over it and everything. But yeah, we've run into those issues. And that person was my friend too. Becoming friends with your service techs is a very difficult thing, and it's a very complicated thing to handle. So if you can avoid becoming friends with your service techs, I know it sucks because I run a family business and you want it to be a family atmosphere, but man, it's difficult to be friends with the techs too. I mean, I'm talking good friends. Like one of the guys was in my wedding or at my wedding, and then I've had other service techs that I became really, really good friends with that started to disrespect me or thought that they could, talk back when we were doing work-related stuff, and it gets tricky. So running a business is definitely tricky, especially if it's a family business. And when I say family business, we don't do the greatest at having structure and organization and ... We're just, we try to make sure that everybody's taken care of and stuff. And you tend to get close to people when you run a family business like that. So it is a little difficult. And yes, I have run into those issues, Glenn. I do not have great solutions other than saying be careful about becoming really good friends with your service techs. There's a fine line between a business relationship and becoming best friends, because that has the potential to become toxic if you become best friends, for sure, especially if you're in a leader role. That's funny, Laska. Let's see. I'm seeing what I'm missing in the go to any heavier commercial site. Lead lag is what you will see. Definitely. Yeah. So chillers work that way, right? Yeah, some chillers will work that way. So there's lots of different stuff. Even train package units will have, some of them have a lead lag setup where one compressor becomes a primary and they automatically switch back and forth, and it's in the Reliatel logic. They'll do different things. I've seen that before too. So all right, a couple more questions. That's funny. David Rivas said, get a Mexican dog, resilient as fuck, will eat anything, super loyal. That's funny, man. No, we had to get a boutique, a silver Labrador retriever, right? I just wanted a lab, and my wife's like, no, we're going to get a silver lab. And I love him to death, but good grief. So I already answered that question. Cool. Already covered that one. This is an interesting one. So Zach is in trade school and he wants help. So Zach kind of told me a story, and unfortunately this kind of is the trend, but Zach is in trade school and he's being taught air conditioning in a trade school, and he wants to learn the refrigeration side. So he's kind of taken it upon himself. They don't really have a refrigeration program at his trade school. It's more air conditioning based, but he's taken it upon himself to take some refrigeration equipment that he has in the labs and different things like that, and he's trying to get the refrigerators operating. And Zach was asking me about charging the systems because he was a little confused on how to charge refrigeration systems with expansion valves. Okay, so first and foremost, if you have a refrigeration system with an expansion valve, plain and simple, an expansion valve works on the principle of a solid column of liquid going to the expansion valve at all times. Okay, whenever the system's running, you need a solid column of liquid. Now, there's some weird things though. Some manufacturers tend to do weird stuff. Okay, but typically on a refrigeration system that has a receiver and an expansion valve, you need a solid column of liquid at all times. Now, even if the system doesn't have a receiver, it's supposed to have a solid column of liquid. Sometimes there is refrigeration systems, like Charleston used to do it, where they would install just a refrigeration system, no receiver, but it would still have an expansion valve. In situations like that, what I have found is most of the time the manufacturers would oversize the condensers, so that way you could actually have enough subcooling. They would overshoot the subcooling about 10 degrees, so that way at any given situation, there's a proper charge in the system. Now, interestingly enough, even on air conditioning equipment, did you know that, when we have subcooling targets, 10 degrees, 12 degrees, whatever the manufacturer set, those targets typically are there just to be safe, okay? So that way in any situation, that expansion valve always has a solid column of liquid. Because if we know that if you have 1 degree of any subcooling, you have a solid column of liquid, right? But oftentimes manufacturers will have you overdo the subcooling, 10, 12 degrees, whatever it is, because they want to make sure that in all conditions, right? Because hot conditions, cold conditions, different types, that expansion valve is going to require higher loads in the box, higher loads in the occupied space. That expansion valve opening and closing is going to need more refrigerant or less refrigerant going to it. So oftentimes when they do have those subcooling targets, they're there for overkill kind of, because, just to make sure that at any standard operating conditions, outdoor conditions, you constantly have some sort of subcooling. But anyways, back to the question. So if you do have an expansion valve in your system, you need to make sure you have a solid column of liquid going to it. Okay. Now, when it comes to sizing your equipment, so Zach was saying that he's taking different pieces of equipment, condensed units, evaporators, and he's trying to hodgepodge equipment together. You need to be careful because reach-in coolers and different things like that are typically designed with high evaporator TDs, so that we can have quick pull-down times. Versus in a walk-in cooler and a walk-in freezer, we typically, on average, will design our equipment for a 10-degree evaporator TD. So that's the saturated suction temperature compared to the ambient temperature inside the box, and typically it's about a 10-degree TD. Now, sometimes you may engineer it to a 15 or whatever because of whatever they're storing in the box, but for the most part, it's about 10 degrees. But reach-in coolers and reach-in freezers will often have a much higher TD, which can lead to a lot of issues. If you have a really high TD on a reach-in cooler, you can tend to have more frosting issues where the evaporator can frost up because the evaporator is going to get really cold, right? But they do higher TDs on reach-in coolers typically, so that way they have quicker pull-down times. Because customers are opening and closing the doors all the time. And for the most part, a walk-in cooler is typically designed to only have the door open so many times a day. But we all know that's kind of not really happening, because I show in my videos all the time where I'm having to de-ice walk-in coolers and freezers because they leave the damn doors open, okay? So understand, if you have a TXV, you need a solid column of liquid going to that expansion valve, plain and simple, okay? So hopefully that answers a little bit of your questions, Zach. Feel free to send me an email, hvacrvideos@gmail.com, if you need more clarification. See what I'm missing here. Chris Eads, thank you very much for becoming a channel supporter. That's really awesome, bud. It's really, really cool. And again, I kind of already talked about it, but Chris is the person that designed the AC Easy T, and I already talked about that earlier in the stream, but it's acezt.com. Again, I have no affiliation with it, but I just noticed that he makes a really cool product. And so what you'll want to go is acezt.com. You'll get to see some videos and some pictures, but it's simple as it is. It's a 3/4 inch T with a cap on the end that's removable, and he has some special fittings designed to either block the T's off, to blow water through the T in one direction or the other direction. It's a pretty ingenious design when you see what it is, and it's pretty cool the way he sets it up. So definitely check it out. Let me see what else we got going on in the chat right now. Kobe Lewis, thank you very much for that super chat. All this support, you guys, it's really amazing. I really, really do appreciate the little bit of support. If you guys are interested, feel free to go to my website, hvacrvideos.com. HVACRvideos.com. We've got the hats, the shirts, the sweaters, the beanies, all that different stuff available, and it's just a cool way to support the channel. So let's see. Colby, again, thanks so much for that super chat. And you said, how was my day? My day was good, man. Just normal service calls, just ice machine service calls. I was following one of my customers that doesn't do routine maintenance with me, but they pay a national filter changing company to come through and clean their ice machines and stuff. And basically, I've been following that filter changing company, working on all the equipment that they're cleaning. So it's been interesting. Basically, stuff not adjusted right. So that was pretty much my day today. Let me see. Okay, so I had an anonymous person ask me a question about working for a toxic company, and I'm not going to mention the person's name, but he sent me a pretty detailed email about working for a toxic smaller company where everybody just kind of yells at each other and talks crap to each other, and it's not in a fun way is the way he's describing it, or at least I'm understanding it. And he was just kind of curious what I would do in that situation. So when you're with toxic people, you tend to become toxic yourself, in my experience. So if you're in a toxic relationship, it's constantly going to be toxic. If you have toxic friends that are just constantly negative, then they're gonna bleed off on you, in my experience. So in my experience, I would, in putting myself in your shoes, I would look at my situation, make sure that it's not just me that's perceiving something to be toxic, okay? Whenever I think of other people having issues, I always reflect on myself first. If I'm in a situation where I feel like I just don't get along with someone, I look at myself and I think, what is it that I'm doing that this person doesn't like, right? And as long as I evaluate myself and find that the problem doesn't lie with me, then I'm going to move away from that toxic situation, because eventually you're going to get taken down with that toxic situation. So Noah says he would like to see Trevor on my show. That'd be interesting. I would have to work some things out because I don't really have a way with my current broadcasting software, Streamlabs, to have guests on my show. But that's potentially something that I've kind of been wanting to work on. I am also working on a podcast, of which would be a lot easier to have people on my content. So yeah, I will. That is one of the things. Is my goals for this upcoming year is to make myself more available to people, to spend more time with my family. There's ways that I'm working on doing that while still making myself available. I'm going to have my children, my daughters come in and help me with social media and stuff like that. My wife already helps me with the merch and things. The other thing is continue my relationships that I have made with lots of social influencers and industry contacts. I've made some great relationships and gotten to know a lot of people over the last couple months, and I want to continue those relationships. I want to be better with social media and my social media interaction. I want to start posting more on all the different social media platforms. So currently I don't really do a lot, but I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on TikTok. And I think that's all the social platforms for the time being. But I'm always looking for new ones. You can find me at HVACR videos on all of those social platforms. So I am also going to be working on a podcast, which I've been talking about for years. So the podcast will be coming out, and that'll give me opportunities to do more collaborations with people. And I'm also working on some projects that I can't talk about yet, but we're working on some cool stuff, some educational stuff. So that'll be fun for the year. Let me see what else we got going on in here. I know Av, the YouTuber who do I think he does machinist, plumber? I do know of Av. He's an electronics engineer. What trade do I think he does, machinist or plumber? Oh, I don't know that. Av. No, I'm thinking of EEV. Wait, I'm thinking of EEV blog. He's an electronics engineer. Av, yeah, I know of him, but I don't know what trade he does. So let me see what else we got going on here. OnlyFans. I tried to get my wife. I told my wife I wanted to open an OnlyFans, and she was like, no. And I was like, no, I'm going to open an OnlyFans, and I'm going to troll everybody, because I was just going to show either just pictures of my feet all the time, or I was just going to put my normal HVACR videos on there. Like, I was going to troll everybody and just do that, but my wife was not having that one. She just like, I put my foot down, and she lifted my foot right back up and then stomped on my foot. So yeah, I'm not going to be able to have an OnlyFans. I'm sorry. But I really, really wanted one. Let's see what else we got in here. Let's see. Super Grubs, Super G-Dub, you said you're starting a new company. How do you price your labor time PM plans? Dude, you need to talk to your accountant and you need to figure out your labor costs, your all your expenses, your business costs, and you need to calculate your labor rates off of that. So what are you going to be paying people? What are you going to be paying yourself? You need to have a business plan. And I would highly suggest that you don't go in and just set your prices off of your competition, because that can get you in trouble. Don't be the cheapest person out there. Because you're only going to hurt yourself and everybody else in the industry. You may be the cheapest person and you may get tons of business, but eventually you're going to burn out, you're going to wash out, and you're going to realize that you have to raise your prices. And that's only going to hurt everybody in the industry and yourself. So don't be the cheapest person for sure. Let's see what else. Yeah, that's who I'm thinking of. Yeah, for sure. Let's see. My stream is getting fuzzy on you, and I don't know why. I'm streaming at an excellent connection right now, so I think there might be something up with your internet connection possibly. So I answered that one. I got one more question on my list right now, and it's from Sunny. And I kind of already answered this one, but it kind of misses, but we'll talk about it again too. So Sunny asked me about how to size refrigeration equipment. So let's take a walk-in cooler, for example. So the first thing when I'm going to size a walk-in cooler is I'm going to do measurements and evaluate the condition of the space that we're going to cool. So typically a walk-in cooler. So we're going to take measurements of the inside square footage of the box. We're going to take that. We're going to find our heat infiltration based off of the type of insulation they have in the walls. Polyurethane foam. Is it 4 inches thick walls? Is it an exposed box outside? There's a lot of things that we have to think about. Is the box out in the direct sunlight? Are you going to get solar intrusion? Different things like that. Okay. So you're going to evaluate your load. There is softwares that can help you do this. Especially with the new equipment, do not oversize your load. It was very common, and even I've been guilty of it for many years, that I would do a load calculation and then they had some generic numbers like, do you want to be an extra heavy duty usage or whatever? And then I would always click extra heavy duty, so that way I was oversized. That's going to lead to a lot of issues with the new refrigeration equipment, the AWEF compliant equipment. So you want to make sure that you have a properly sized system. Don't oversize it unless it needs to be engineered to do so for a specific reason, okay? So once you figure out your load, your occupants, is there going to be forklifts, how many lights, how many people are in the box on a regular, that's all part of your load. Then you're going to select your equipment. You need to select an evaporator and a condensing unit that match each other as best as possible. So I'll typically start with the evaporator, find an evaporator that can cool the load, and then find a condensing unit that can run the evaporator. But you can't ignore the line sizing. You can't ignore the equipment placement. That kind of stuff is very, very important. So doing a load calculation is not the easiest thing in the world. In the past, we would rely on supply houses to do so, but you need to be careful. If you can get a hold of an actual engineer that knows what he's doing with refrigeration, then you have some pretty good odds. But if you're just calling a counter guy at the supply house, I'd be a little skeptical to make sure that he understands exactly what he's doing and he's sizing that equipment properly. A lot of the manufacturers out there right now that make the new AWEF compliant equipment, they actually have matched equipment. So if you buy an evaporator, they tell you this is the condensing unit you should use, and it matches this equipment. Similar to the SEER ratings and different things that we have on residential and commercial, it's now applied to the refrigeration side too. So the Jammer, thank you very much for that super chat. And you said, oh, definitely, I made you a better instructor. It's hard to find a place that's not certified by either NATE or ESCO, my remarks. So you better me as being a better instructor. So I'm helping you to become a better instructor is what you're saying. And it's hard to find a place that's not certified by either NATE or ESCO, my remarks. I don't know what you're asking me with that question, but I'm just going to kind of answer broadly. I find that certifications, any certification is better than no certification, okay? There's hypocrisy in all the different certifications. I don't know if I'm going in the direction that you don't want to right now, but I'm just going to go ahead and talk. So there's hypocrisy in all the different certifications, and I'm not going to name names, but there's one certification that you got to pay every year to maintain your certification, but you still got to go to continuing education. You know, there's other ones that you have to pay an arm and a leg to be part of. There's certification programs that certify the school different ones like that. But I still stand firm that any certification is better than none. Does a certification make you a better technician? Yes and no. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. There's some techs that can just pass the test and they have every certification, but they can't fix crap, okay? But then there's other techs that don't have certifications and they're amazing techs. But the cool thing about all the different certification programs, my favorite part about all of them that makes it worth it for me and for anybody else, is to have NATE, to have ESCO, to have HVAC Excellence, to have RSCS, to have any of the certifications out there. You have to continue your education. You have to prove to the certification organization that you're still bettering yourself every day, and you have to turn in continuing education hours to maintain your certification, okay? So while I do see hypocrisy in the amount of money that you have to pay for some of them, I appreciate the fact that in order to maintain those certifications, you have to continue and better yourself. You have to keep going to classes. That's the most important thing. If you're a good enough tech that you can do all that on your own, then so be it. But continue education and never stop learning, because this trade is not ever going to be just the same. It's changing every single day. I just had a talk at the HVAC school training symposium, and I talked about the way that everything is changing. Right now, we have a bigger influx of more new technology coming in, more regulations, and we are losing technicians left and right because they're retiring or whatever, right? So we have all this new advancements in technology coming into the trade, but we don't have the people to fix it. So more than ever, we need to better ourselves. And this is an opportunity for all of us to make more money because, and one of the things that I encourage everybody out there to do is to share your knowledge, right? We all have a little bit of knowledge. You have knowledge that I don't have, right? He has knowledge that I don't have. I have knowledge that you don't have. Let's all share it, okay? In the past, there was an old school mentality that once you got knowledge, you coveted it and you did not share it. I can pull up emails from people saying, I need to stop making videos because I'm giving away too much knowledge that they paid a lot of money for, okay? I'm sorry if you paid a lot of money for this, but I'm going to help the industry and try to better it by sharing the little bit of knowledge that I have. And understand something. If you have knowledge and you're a competent technician and you know what you're doing and you're a nice person, you are not going to get replaced if you give your knowledge away. You're going to be needed for the rest of your career as long as you're not a jerk. Okay? So share your knowledge. Everybody out there. You know, you don't have to have a giant social platform like I do. You can share it between your friends. You can go to supply houses. You can mentor people. Share your knowledge. We all need to do better at doing that. All right. So hopefully I kind of answered your question a little bit, Sonny. I know I went off on a tangent as usual. So if there's anybody that I didn't answer the questions, feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. I'm going to look at the chat. Colby Lewis says, show us the crane in the back. So that is a Lego crane that my daughter built, and it's currently holding a Zoomlock Max fitting from Sporlan. My daughter built that. It's a Lego Technique, whatever crane. My daughter likes to build the Lego things for me, so I'll pick she loves building Legos for herself. I think that my youngest daughter is going to be an engineer. I think my oldest daughter, as much as she argues with me, she's definitely going to be a lawyer, and my youngest daughter is going to be a mechanical engineer for sure. It's interesting how you can tell what your kids are going to be at a young age. So let's see what else. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I am the best boiler tech, Laska, for sure. I don't know what the hell a boiler is. So, yeah. Anyways, I've seen 1 or 2 boilers on my roofs before, but that's about it. Let me see what else. Seeing what I'm missing in here. I'm not missing anything else. So, again, do me a favor. I lost my train of thought for a minute. Anybody that's looking for a job in the Southern California area, Inland Empire specifically, shoot me an email, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. I am going to wrap this up because I am going to make a better effort of keeping these streams shorter and spending more time with my family. Plus, I have a tax appointment tomorrow, and I got to spend a bunch of hours on my computer right now uploading tax documents because I got to figure out how much money I owe the U.S. government. That's going to be fun, right? So fun how that works. Feel free to send me an email. I really, really appreciate it. JYP, how do I handle compressor burnouts? Change the compressor, sweep the system with nitrogen, install Proper suction filters and liquid dryers, come back a couple days later, do an acid oil test, change the suction filters and liquid dryers, potentially remove the suction filter if need be, or if it's sized appropriately, you can leave it in the system. Personally, I don't introduce any things that don't belong in the system. Refrigerant oil and refrigerant is pretty much the only thing other than nitrogen with a proper evacuation. So I don't use flushes or acids or chemicals or neutralizers or anything like that. That's my personal preference. I used them earlier in my career. Don't use them anymore. So compressor burnouts, understand that something made that compressor burn out. Make sure the customer understands that. Just because you get it going doesn't mean it's fixed. Now that you got it going, we got to figure out why it failed in the first place. So, you know, this quote was just to change the compressor. Then we got to figure out why it failed, because if you don't, you're going to be changing that compressor in another couple months and they're going to be right back in the same situation. So I'm going to close this out. I really appreciate everybody out there. Thank you so very much. Questions I didn't answer, hvacrvideos@gmail.com. Remember, Friday evenings about 6:05 p.m. Pacific, I go live with my buddies on the HVAC Overtime YouTube channel, work permitting. And that's it, guys. We will catch you on the next one. I'm going to go ahead and cue up the outro music. And again, thank you guys so very much. And yeah, that is it.